Be the Talk, episode 293, featuring John Doran. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with John Doran. John, are you ready to talk?
I'm more than ready to talk. It's a pleasure to be here.
John Doran speaks to management bodies, education trusts, teachers, parents, and students on the topics of resilience, well-being, stress management, and maximizing performance both nationally and internationally. John Doran is on the board of Make-A-Wish Foundation. John Doran, welcome to the talk.
Thank you very much for having me, Nathan. It's a pleasure.
Your talk is called Positive Education for the 21st Century, How to Thrive in a World of Busy. And I love the central message of your talk is really that we are enough, and really reinforcing in a world of grades where we all come up in a different place on the pile, to really reinforce that idea that we are enough, and some really brilliant little jokes and delightful moments in your talk. Please, John, take us behind the talk.
Well, thank you, Nathan. I've been an educator now for 25 years. And as you say, I have three simple messages in my talk, really, that you are enough, to slow down and to develop or cultivate an attitude of gratitude. We're living in a world of busy, and I just talk about the power of a pause when you're living your life in fast forward.
Well, and you had a kind of a disconcerting comment in the beginning of the talk that says, it's never going to be as slow paced as it is right now in life, which none of us want to accept. I love that you kind of jarred us and shocked us with that statement, but you also lightened it up with some really funny little quips. But what's the research or some of the things that you're saying, the harbingers out there of how much we're about to speed up?
Yeah, we're living in a world that the pace of change is never going to be slower than it is today. The one thing about change is that it's not optional. It's going to be mandatory. But development and growth is that's something that we can control. So it's very important that we create, I suppose, an education environment for our young people to thrive. And we can't take that for granted, Nathan, in the world that we're living in. It's a very different world than when we grew up in, with different challenges and different possibilities.
Yeah, well, I interview people, and some people that are from the business world, they say, do what the market wants you to do and don't go and follow your heart. And then other people come on and they say, you've got to be unique. The things that you weren't meant to do are essentially going to be automated faster than you realize. So find a way to merge your life calling with what's going out there in the market, and be open and aware of what's happening. What's your take on that? You've worked with students for 25 years. You're a fellow fan of Sir Ken Robinson, and reference him in your talk. What's your thought about what students should be doing instead of always only trying to be the top of the class? From your perspective, there's only one top of the class. So what do the rest of us do?
Well, you are so right, Nathan. Our young people will not be talking about a job for life. They'll be talking about a job for the life of the contract. And I think for our young people, they really need to be focusing in on their emotional intelligence, their awareness of their own emotional weather, their ability to regulate it. And other crucial piece is empathy, to empathize with the emotional weather of other people. I think Billy Connolly put it best, Nathan. He said, empathy is, if you want to know what empathy is, walk a mile in my shoes. If nothing else, you'll be a mile away from me and you'll have my shoes. But empathy is super important. And I think that personal piece, Nathan, if we don't strategically teach that, we'll have a generation that will be underemployed, unemployed, or unemployable. And that's the challenge of AI. A lot of the jobs that we take for granted today will not be here in 5 years' time.
Yeah. And we look at what's going on in our schools. We have bullying, we have, misfits and and a lot of us can relate to that. And I think really one of the encouraging things in the last 15 years or so, we're not treating it as some kind of a, man up or rite of passage thing to beat up the bully and everything else. We're really looking at these as systemic things and realizing that the norm is more to be out of sync maybe and feel like an outsider. And the core of emotional intelligence is really assessing the way we feel, overcoming those things so that we can add value and connect and lift other people up. What are your thoughts?
Well, we have a paradox, Nathan. We've never been more electronically connected, as we are showing here this morning, and yet paradoxically never more emotionally disconnected. I sometimes tell my students, would it be better to meet a friend rather than add a friend? And a lot of young people are losing the power of conversation, of actually just sitting down beside somebody saying, how are you? And we're hardwired for human connection, for relationships. And I think that is at the source. A lot of young people today, Nathan, have tens of thousands of friends, but are very lonely. And I think that is going to be a huge thing in this generation of people who are actually very lonely and want to connect. The greatest friend to depression is isolation, and the greatest enemy of it is actually human connection. And that's so very much important in this social media age with pressures and, comparison is a thief of joy. When you go on to your Instagram feed, you're never smart enough, tall enough, skinny enough. You're never enough. And that's a challenge for young people living in an age of continuing comparisons. And they never match up.
What a powerful antidote in your talk, because your first pillar is I am enough. So you're really teaching children and really all of us grown-up children how to retrain our brains so that we come against what we see. I'm looking for my phone here on my Instagram feed or everything. I'm on vacation. I'm doing some really neat things. I got asked to give a speech or something like that, and everybody's rejoicing over me. And then a day later, I'm looking at everybody else doing that, and I'm envious of them. So I am enough. What were the other two, just to remind us? And then I'd love for you to deep dive into those for a couple minutes.
The second one was to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. I mean, I think lowering the threshold of what we're grateful for, Nathan, is the single biggest thing that I know of increasing your happiness quotient. And then the third one is simply to slow down, to take a moment. I mean, I think sometimes we give young people a hard time. I mean, 75% of us spend 75% of our time looking down. And that's all of us. That's intergenerational. So I think you go to a restaurant, Nathan, you see most couples, rather than talking to each other, actually looking at their feed. So those are the three pillars. You are enough. Cultivate that attitude of gratitude and just slow down. In the rush to the next moment, worrying about the last, we have a habit of missing out that little piece in the middle. And that little piece is more than important. That's your life. Yeah.
So you are enough. That's empowerment. Those are empowering, powerful thoughts to meditate on instead of the default reverse. Being thankful being thankful. That's thankfulness and gratitude. So you're focusing on what you have and how happy you are about the little that you do have instead of the overwhelming that you feel like you don't have. So that's another really valuable perception shift. And then the final one, being mindful, being in the present. And then that's being open to what could be created in the space around you right now if you're not preoccupied about what you don't have or how you can't do anything.
But, to synopsize it, Nathan, really, happiness is an inside job. And I think if you actually, I call it tune in your appreciation station to the good in your life, that's oftentimes sitting silently at the back of your awareness. If you woke up this morning and you were healthy and you're happy, well, there was somebody who woke up or didn't wake up this morning. So it's very important to tune into those things that are hidden in plain sight, really. And I always say, Nathan, what I'm talking about is common sense. But common sense is quite often not so common. And where it's not so common, it's not so common practice. So it's just a kind of remember all that old wisdom that we grew up with, that our parents told us. I think that's really what I'm trying to plug us back into. To plug young people back into that intuitive resiliency that we all. No one escapes in life, Nathan. Tough times will come into all of our lives, but need not reduce you to rubble.
Well, we've been enjoying this conversation with John Doran. His talk is called Positive Education for the 21st Century, How to Thrive in a world of busy. And we're going to be talking about you, Talk Universe. We're going to pivot over, talk about John's preparation and performance for his talk in just a moment in the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back. It is time for the Blitz Round with John Doran. We're going to ask John a series of either or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. John, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
A blender.
How does that work for you?
I kind of like to be spontaneous. I have a rough idea of where I'm going. And then on the day of my talk, there was a number of things that I omitted on the fly and actually included on the fly as well.
So you walked in there with like a mental outline, or did you rehearse? Or, I mean, obviously you've been teaching for 25 years, so you have your own internal kind of map.
Yeah, I had the basic blueprint. I knew there was 3 things that I wanted to share and 3 kind of stories to go along with it. And I knew my ending as well, going back to my old teacher. Other than that, then things that are added or not added as I felt the crowd. And I came in around 10 minutes, so I was pretty happy that I kept it tight as well.
Yeah, it was actually under 10 minutes, so it was great for visibility, viewability. As you didn't specifically say this, but our attention spans are declining as well, and the goldfish has surpassed us a few years back. So having a less than 10-minute, a 3-digit instead of a 4-digit timestamp on your talk actually is great for viewability, and I know that from some studies that I've done. John, what's a tip, tool, or technique that helped you?
Breathing. We was 8 people speaking on the night, and 2 froze. And I was just concentrating on my breathing before I went up, just to relax and to enjoy it, Nathan. I wanted to enjoy it and to reinterpret those nervous energy as this is a challenge that I can overcome. So I was really proud that I executed on the night, but actually just brought my attention to my breathing in the moments immediately before my talk.
Now, I know in education, obviously you're teaching. If it's more or less traditional, there may be times that you're giving other kinds of presentations. Have you done TED style short form talks like this before? And what's your advice for other educators that might be giving their first talk?
It's a great question. Normally I do a lot of talks, but they're often for 2 hours or for even 2 days. So to actually
for 2 days,
yes, 2-day workshop.
not in a row.
But, the craft 10 minutes talk takes an awful lot more effort than a 2-hour talk. To get it tight, that every word means something. There's a lot of thought and a lot of effort goes into making something seem nonchalant and easy. There's a lot of thought and effort. And I think it's very important to debunk this myth of talent as well, Nathan, that when you see a really good talk effortlessly done, there's an awful lot of work that's gone into that. And I think that's a good message for young people. It's effort rather than talent.
Yeah, that's part of the reason we have this podcast, because nobody's told me, I went up there and winged it and and we pulled it off and it was great and got all these views. John, were you an opener? Were you a closer, or were you in between?
I was second, Nathan, and so I got to see the first person speaking, and I was really glad because I think as the talks went on, the nerves started to accumulate. So I was able to relax and enjoy the rest of the presentations on the evening. So I didn't have the pressure of opening, and I didn't have the pressure of closing. I was second, which I was very happy with. Yeah,
but number 2, I mean, that can be a tough act to follow. So how did you, did you prepare for, not that you prepared for that, but how did you end up surmounting that challenge of number 2?
I think I had to keep my head in my own game. And that was how I did it. I had to execute what I had in my mind. So I was keeping my focus firmly on that, to my opening line. That's where my head was at. What's my first line going to be? And then just to default to practice and to get out of my own way, really, Nathan.
Last question. What was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Well, I think that the most unexpected but pleasing thing was that people actually stood up at the end. So I felt when that happened, I didn't do too badly. But nothing really strange or untoward happened that I can recall. I can remember that strong sense of nervous excitement about getting up there with the bright lights in front of a crowd that were hushed. And that was a moment. And I just wanted to seize that moment. And that was what was going on in my mind at the time.
Well, we've been enjoying the Blitz Round with John Doran. His talk is called Positive Education for the 21st Century, How to Thrive in a World of Busy. And if you want to watch that talk, you can type it into YouTube, or you can go to our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com, and we will have a link to that, as well as looks like we have John's LinkedIn profile right there. We'll have a link so that you can literally link in with John, and we'll also mention a link to his newest book, Ways to Wellbeing, which is available there. And we'll be back with John Doran in just a moment for the final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with John C. Doran. It's time for the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
Be you. Be you with skill. Don't be a tribute act to somebody else's life. Be yourself. That would be the best advice I think I can give. And if it, and the final piece at the end of my talk, I say, if it is to be, it is up to me.
John Doran, thanks so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
It was a real honor, Nathan. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.